Becoming world number one is one of the hardest things to do in tennis, and there are only a few who could make it up there. But despite that, it's a bit sad to know that the achievements of those who never made it to the top of the rankings rarely get a lot of attention. So in today's video, let's talk about the 8 tennis players who we think should have been ranked number 1. Starting off with number 8, we've got Arthur Ashe. He tried his very best, but he made it to number 2 in the world. Many experts think he's one of the best American tennis players ever, and we fully agree with them. The player was actually the first African-American player to be chosen for the US Davis Cup team, which of course also made him the only black man to have ever won the singles titles at the US Open in 1968, the Australian Open in 1970, and Wimbledon in 1975. Unfortunately, the player had a heart attack in 1979, which surprised everyone at the moment, considering his healthy physique, and because of this, he had to have a quadruple bypass surgery and then another heart surgery 4 years later. 5 years after the second surgery, it was discovered that he had HIV. According to the doctors, he'd been exposed to the virus from the blood transfusions that he got during the second surgery. Sadly, he died in 1993 of pneumonia caused by AIDS and was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom after his death. Next up, let's talk about Rod Laver at number 7. He has won 200 singles titles, which is more than anyone else in tennis history. And the fact that he's never been ranked number 1 in the ATP rankings is still unbelievable for us. Although some of you might disagree, since he was titled world number 1 for 7 years in a row, from 1964 to 1970, and for 2 years, from 1961 to 1962. But that was all before the ATP ranking system was even made. We still think he deserved to be on the top after that as well, because he was the only tennis player to have won the calendar Grand Slam twice, in 1962 and 1969. He's also the only player to have won a Grand Slam in the Open era. What's even cooler is that the center court at Melbourne Park, where the Australian Open is held, is called Rod Laver Arena. And it's often said that no GOAT discussion is complete without mentioning this Australian tennis legend. In 1971, he became the first professional tennis player to win more than $1 million in prize money over the course of his career. And he stayed the sport's top money winner for 7 years. The man then retired in 1976 when he turned 38. Moving on to number 6, Vitas Gerulaitis. In 1980, Vitas Gerulaitis finally managed to beat Jimmy Connors after losing to him 16 times in a row. When asked how he finally beat his rival, the American was famously quoted as saying, "Because nobody beats Vitas Gerulaitis 17 times in a row." This response was typical of the player's easygoing personality, which he showed throughout his personal life. He was known for having a lot of fun, sometimes too much, but he took tennis very seriously. The best season he ever had was in 1977, and he almost won Wimbledon, but Bjorn Borg beat him in the semifinals in a 5-set match that was very close. In the fall of that year, he beat John Lloyd in 5 sets to win his first and only singles title at the Australian Open. Later, he had a few more chances to win a Grand Slam singles title, but he fell just short. He lost in the finals of the 1979 US Open to John McEnroe and the 1980 French Open to Bjorn Borg. The player died when he was just 40 years old due to a tragic incident of carbon monoxide poisoning. Not to mention Alex Corretja, who's at number 5. There's no doubt that in the modern era, Spain has given the world a lot of great tennis players. But there was one Spanish player in particular who didn't get the credit he deserved in the sport, even though the things he did are legendary. He had a run that not many could comprehend. And in 1998 and 2001, the Spaniard got to the final of the French Open twice. But it was pretty sad that on other levels, he barely made it far. Outside of clay, the US Open quarterfinals in 1996 were his best result. After that, in February 1999, he was ranked number 2 in the world for singles, and in 2000, he helped Spain win its first ever Davis Cup. As you can see, Corretja still has some records that make him one of the best and underrated players in the business. After he retired, and in 2005, the former player coached Spain's Davis Cup team in 2012 and 2013. Now for number 4, Michael Stich. You might remember the former German tennis professional for winning Wimbledon in 1991. He had to beat the then world number 1, Stefan Edberg, during the semifinals, and 3-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker in the final to win the title. Stich also won other important titles, like the men's doubles Wimbledon championship with John McEnroe in 1992, and the men's doubles gold medal at the Olympics in 1996. The ATP World Championships at the end of the year 1993 were a big highlight for him. He was the only player in the 1990s to win the title without losing a match, beating Pete Sampras in the final. In the same year, he even won both the Davis Cup and the Hopman Cup while playing for Germany. Being one of the few players to win both singles and doubles tournaments on all surfaces, the man was literally good at everything, be it the baseline or at the net. After Wimbledon in 1997, Stich said he was done with the professional tour, and since then has spent most of his time on his AIDS Foundation. Let's not forget to talk about our number 3, Guillermo Vilas. After Wimbledon, Vilas won 7 titles in a row in 1977 at Kitzbühel, Washington, Louisville, South Orange, Columbus, the US Open, and Paris, all being on clay. That meant that he'd managed to win 57 straight games. In total, the Argentine won a record of 16 ATP singles titles that year. That's crazy, guys. Even though he did a great job, he was only ranked number 2 in the world that year. This kept him from ever getting to the top spot in his career. And instead of him, Connors, who won the Masters and 6 other titles that year, was named world number 1 at the end of that season. Some people say that the tournaments that Jimmy won were more important than those that Vilas won, which is why he was ranked higher. Still, the player's 4 Grand Slam singles titles at the Australian Open in 1978 and 1979, the French Open in 1977, and the US Open in 1977 make him one of the sport's most famous names. What's more, at number 2, we've got Michael Chang. Chang only won 1 Grand Slam singles title during his career, but the way he won it may have helped convince voters in 2008 that he should be in the Tennis Hall of Fame. In fact, the most exciting part of the 1989 French Open wasn't the final. It was when 15th seeded guy played world number 1 Ivan Lendl in the 4th round. His opponent had won the tournament 3 times in the previous 5 years. Michael, who was only 17, gave him a lot of trouble, but still lost the first 2 sets, 4-6 and 4-6. He didn't back down though, and won the 3rd and 4th sets 6-3 and 6-3, even though he had terrible leg cramps during the 4th set. In the 5th, he threw moon balls into the air, ate bananas, and drank water whenever he could to get rid of cramps. Talk about bananas to the rescue. Then, when he was serving at 15:30, he tried to get away with an unusual underarm serve, which surprisingly helped him win the match. He beat Stefan Edberg in the final and became the youngest man to ever win a Grand Slam title. Finally, at number 1, let's talk about Goran Ivanisevic. For a while, it looked like this guy would never win Wimbledon. He had come in 2nd place 3 times, but never won. In 1992, 1994, and 1998, he reached the final of the championships, but each time he lost to Andre Agassi, and then Pete Sampras twice. By the summer of 2001, his ranking had dropped to number 125, and it seemed unlikely that he'd ever win Wimbledon. In fact, he had such a low ranking that he needed a wild card to play at the championship. But he got very lucky in a run, where he made it to the final for the first time in 3 years, and beat Patrick Rafter 9-7 in the deciding set to become the lowest ranked player and the first wildcard entry to win Wimbledon. He was never the number 1 tennis player in the world. Rankings don't mean much when you win the most important tennis tournament in the world as the number 125 player and enter as a wild card. That's a wrap for this video. What did you think about all these players who surely deserved to be ranked number 1? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.